All right, what's up? What's happening? What it do, baby? You're tuned into another edition of the Why Not Us, Why Not Now podcast. It's your boy Xavier, aka X, aka Zay, joined by my brother KB. My guy, what's going on, man?
What's going on, man? Feeling good, feeling good.
Yes, sir. And we don't usually get to start shows like this, man. We got two pieces of breaking news in two different sports that are coming out. We got the MLB. There's been a new managerial hire for the Washington Nationals. That would be Dave Betura. We'll get to him in just a moment, but we got to talk about the firing that has happened in the NFL within the past hour or so at the time of this recording here on Friday, October 31st, 2025. That would actually be Blake Betura, excuse me, not Dave, Blake Betura. And also, happy Halloween to all those who celebrate. Please be safe tonight. Be smart with your choices. But Chris Grier is no longer in Miami, KB. They mutually parted ways this morning with him as the general manager. And to me, that is the start of a rebuild for that organization. They have confirmed that Mike McDaniel will at least remain the head coach throughout the remainder of this season. I expect that to change as soon as that first Monday post regular season hits. I expect him to be out of the door too. But I was trying to explain to people who were like, oh man, the Dolphins might be able to turn this thing around and go on a run just because they went to Atlanta and won on Sunday. No, man, you don't understand. When it comes to the Falcons, that is everybody's get right game. People, even if it's just temporary, it is get right. If you need a get right game, whether it's on the road or it's at home, you play the Atlanta Falcons. I don't know why things are the way that they are when it comes to that, but they are. But not to touch too much onto that side of things. Getting back to Chris Grier here, listen, it was time. He honestly should have been gone a couple of years ago, and we don't root for anyone to lose their job of any sort, but he was not getting the job done in Miami whatsoever, and Stephen Ross finally stepped in and made a move.
Yeah, the writing was on the wall for them. And the fact that Tua got that contract extension also didn't help with the way he's playing. That also didn't, help as far as like justifying keeping him beyond, this season. But yeah, I think that they're going to do a complete overhaul of the staff in Miami. I think the GM, it starts with the GM, the coach is next, and eventually it will be Tua. I do think that keeping Mike McDaniel at least to the end of the season is the right move because I don't really see how it could get any better. I think that they're, going to make some moves that will help them start to rebuild by the trade deadline, especially with guys like Jalen Waddle being in trade rumors, and even guys such as Devin Achane who could possibly be on the move as well. So, I think that this was the right time, the right move. So we'll see what the Dolphins do going forward, but this was it.
And it's the end of a long-standing relationship, too. Grier had been a part of the Dolphins organization since 2000. This was a 25-year relationship. He had been the general manager since 2016. So there have been a lot of ups and downs in the organization throughout the past few years. They had a couple of playoff years in between there, too. But at the end of the day, they just were not getting it done. They have paid too many players too much money on this roster for them to have a 2-7 record this year, and things just looking like they're falling to absolute shambles there. Listen, in all seriousness, we wish Chris Grier all the best. We wish everybody in Miami the best. But the time to start resetting and restarting and rebuilding this organization once again is now. And I say that because it feels like they've been doing that since Dan Marino retired.
Yeah, I mean, like for most of our lifetime, the Dolphins haven't really been competitive like that. So I do think that this is a time that they will need to address everything organizationally. I think the quarterback, the head coach, and obviously the general manager are always the scapegoats. So this is a time to right your wrongs and kind of, save face a little bit. Like everyone has to have a scapegoat in these situations. And unfortunately for Chris Grier, he had to be the first to go. But, shout out to a long tenure with the Dolphins and, wish him well as far as his future endeavors. So let's get into another topic that we were talking about previous to, me and X joining today. We also wanted to point out that when it comes to the NFL, we have to acknowledge the fact that the Browns look awful once again. I believe that it is time to make a change, not only at quarterback, but also head coach, because if Kevin Stefanski will not make a move to Shedeur Sanders, I'm not sure exactly what he's doing at this point. His press conferences leave a lot to be desired as far as does he have a personal issue with Shedeur. I think that this is one of those things that it kind of comes off personal because Dylan Gabriel, in the few starts he's had, has looked terrible. He also looks like there's no juice to this offense. Myles Garrett is frustrated. Although we give Myles Garrett a lot of flack for, taking the money and choosing to stay in Cleveland, I do think that there is an understanding that he should be frustrated. He just set a franchise record for sacks in a game against the Patriots, and they still got blown out, which obviously means that offense is not producing enough to keep up to sustain that defensive pressure that they're putting forward every week. Because Cleveland throughout this year has been one of the better defenses, total defenses in the league. I think that you have to, if you don't believe Shedeur is ready, put him out there so we can actually see if he's ready. But to say we're going to stick with Dylan Gabriel, it almost to me feels personal. It does seem like that he's looking for any reason to not play Shedeur. And if he's not ready, at least let the people see that he's not ready. Don't just tell us that he's not ready. This is Dylan Gabriel's time. We're going to keep working with Dylan Gabriel. It's obviously something else there. X, I want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's a quarterback carousel that's going on over there. I want you to think about this for a second. Kenny Pickett is the only one I'm not going to bring up in this scenario because obviously the Raiders don't trust him either, and they're a tire fire of an organization right now too, the way things are going over there. Joe Flacco leaves the Browns. He looks better. Tyler Huntley, who was their preseason quarterback at times because they weren't giving Shedeur Sanders enough snaps in certain situations. They cut him before the regular season. He goes to Baltimore and he's their backup. He's not even their initial backup. Cooper Rush is. He was their starter last Sunday, and he looked spectacular against the Chicago Bears. I don't think he ever would have had a game like that with the Cleveland Browns. So it's a trickle-down effect from the top of the organization to the very bottom of the organization. It starts with that front office and that ownership. Jimmy Haslam, we've been saying it for years, KB, it's a mess. They should be forced to have to sell that team. Things have not gone good for the Cleveland Browns organization since they came back into the NFL in 1999, if we're being honest. The best stint of ownership they had was when it was originally Art Modell the first time around. Now, of course, we know he moved the team to Baltimore in 1995. That was their last season in Cleveland before coming back in 1999. But things have not been the same since. I'm with you. It does feel personal at this point. I don't know what to say. I don't know why things are this way. But I also want to say this too. If he were to put Shedeur Sanders out there and Shedeur proves to not be ready, that gives ammunition to all of the Shedeur haters out there and all of the people who have something against wanting to see Shedeur play anyway. If Shedeur goes out there next year, whether it's Cleveland or anywhere else, and he looks like a more polished prospect, I would much rather see that than to see them try to rush him out there right now just because they want to appease their fan base and they want to sell some more tickets and they want to get some more jersey sales going. If he truly is not ready to play, and I don't know if he is or he isn't, but if he is not, don't put him out there because if it looks like a disaster, you can't really come back from it.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it like it's two sides of that coin because if he isn't ready, it does give more fuel to the Shedeur haters. But if he is ready, then you have to look at it from a standpoint. Now, Kevin Stefanski kind of looks kind of crazy for not putting him in sooner. Guys that have been, have also, suffered from this quarterback carousel that's going on in Cleveland. Guys like Jerry Jeudy he had a 1,000-yard season. And then comes in going games where he has no targets. So this is one of those things where I feel like if he's truly not ready and you're willing to die on that hill, you have to be willing to at least see, like, it kind of feels like Kevin Stefanski at this point is okay with the outcome and he's okay with being let go by Cleveland because I don't really see how you can bring him back with the recent, this is an organizational problem. This is an organizational problem more than a head coach problem. But with him, it kind of feels like he's going to be the guy making all of the decisions, and he's not even going to allow a quarterback, regardless if his last name was Sanders or Johnson, you have to see what you have. If you're not winning, the best time to evaluate talent is while you're not winning. You're not winning. You're not competitive at all. So if you're going to evaluate any type of talent, this would be the time. So you can see what you have going forward, not necessarily to be a contender or anything like this. Is just going forward to see what you can have offensively, because you have a great defense. Now you need to see if you can bring it all together, but you won't know what you have until you try it out and see what you have for yourself.
How many times are we going to continue to say they have a great defense, though? And I say that because eventually that defense is going to get tired of playing for an offense that's not giving them anything in return. And remember, I said a couple of weeks ago, how do we know Kevin Stefanski isn't doing some of this stuff on purpose? Because he wants to get out of Cleveland to begin with anyway. So I definitely agree with your point right there. There was a rumor that was brought up this week that maybe the Indianapolis Colts are probably going to try to field some calls to try to inquire about adding Myles Garrett to that team. I don't think that any moves are going to happen with that, but if it did, Lord have mercy on everybody in the AFC, because that would truly be the missing piece to that Colts defense that's already doing a good job this season, but that would be the one playmaker that they add that would make them almost unstoppable, if you really want to say that in a sense. But when it comes down to the Cleveland Browns, man, and you talk about them evaluating talent, how about possibly even considering unloading some of that talent to see if you can get draft picks in return for it going forward for whoever your next head coach is going to be? Because I don't believe it's going to be Kevin Stefanski after 2025, but you're going to need to continue to build around the core pieces on this roster that you have, who you do decide to keep. Remember, we said coming into this season, the Browns aren't going to compete for anything this year. We didn't expect them to be a playoff team of any sort because of the gaping holes that they have on their roster, specifically on the offensive side of the football. So you need to see if there are pieces that you have that you can try to get good hauls in return for. And Myles Garrett might be one to consider. I know that you usually wouldn't get rid of a generational talent like that, especially after he just signed a whole new contract the way that he did in the offseason. But you have to think about the big picture here. And he might be the piece that you can get the massive haul for to truly start to reset and rebuild your organization again. But with that being said, I question if the Cleveland Browns even know how to properly rebuild an organization.
Yeah, like you said, man, you got Myles Garrett. He's kind of like right now having a real luxury car, but having a terrible house. He's that's the equivalent I look at when I look at Myles Garrett. He is such a dominant, figure in Cleveland sports in general. I think that if you at least move him, you may be able to get a couple of complimentary players, and you may be able to even get some really high draft picks that can help you reshape your future. I know it kind of seems like the same old type of rotation when it comes to Cleveland, but I mean, you have to salvage something. You have to come out of this season with some type of, thing that makes you, excited for the future. Cleveland fans are tired. Honestly, we're tired of watching it. How many games can you watch that defense just be out there dominating? And still, like, Drake May has not been sacked that many times this year, and yet they still won by damn near 20 points. You cannot continue to do that to your defense by basically having a handicapped offense. And like I said, if you're going to have those pieces, the best thing you can do, like I said, if you're going to be bad, I say in the NFL, if you're going to be bad, be your absolute worst. If you're going to go ahead and just be a team with 3 wins, be your absolute worst. Get rid of some of those valuable pieces, because regardless of what people may believe, there is a market for a lot of those players. And a lot of those players want the opportunity to play for a contender. Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward. You even got guys like Jerry Jeudy who may want to see a different environment, somewhere where he can showcase his skill set. So I'm all for it. I'm all for them doing a fire sale and just go ahead and moving on and, getting rid of Kevin Stefanski. We're not advocating, but I think that's the best move. Bring a new head coach in, start a whole new era in Cleveland coming next season.
We'll definitely have to see what happens. It's definitely something to consider. Got to pivot into some more breaking news here, going over to the baseball world. The Washington Nationals have a new manager, Blake Betura, 33 years old. He is the youngest Major League Baseball manager in more than 50 years. So we know Washington, KB, they've basically been rebuilding this organization since 2019 when they went on a World Series run, which honestly was miraculous when you look back at that season. They made it in as a wild card. And as we know, baseball is a game that's all about momentum. You get hot at the right time and you can go on a run. And that team was able to do that. They haven't had any success since then. Betura, previously the senior player development director for the Tampa Bay Rays. He's managed 4 minor league systems, his first coming at just 25 years old. He has compiled a record of 258 and 144. In his final 2 seasons with Low A Charleston, his teams went 170 and 82 and won league championships. I don't know what to make out of the move yet, but you got to try something else different. And you see the San Francisco Giants also doing that, hiring Tennessee's head coach, a college coach, to come in and manage their big league ball club. So we're seeing a shakeup happen in the MLB all around in terms of how teams are looking for their managers. It makes me honestly question why teams like the Braves and the Padres haven't hired their next managers yet. Maybe they're looking to make some of these next moves too. But just your early thoughts on what the Washington Nationals have done.
Yeah, like you said, they haven't been competitive since 2019, and obviously, this is one of those things where if you're gonna make like headlines because of the age, this is a guy I feel like he's gonna get afforded some opportunities to reshape this franchise, do something completely different than years past. I felt like with him, he has to just continue the process of the rebuild. It's going to be a lot of growing pains that comes along with it. Washington has a couple of good pieces. I think that unfortunately they're in a very competitive NL East. So really the one thing I say for him is to just trust the process, continue to field some of these great prospects coming out of college and your farm system as well, and we'll see where they are 2 years in. Right now, it's too early to tell how this hire is going to really affect them. But I think that it was a good try to try to bring in some new blood and officially start a new era in Washington.
Yeah, and one of the reasons I think we're seeing teams make the moves that they're making in terms of going in these directions, of hiring minor league coaches, college coaches, is because of where the farm systems are ranked too. They have to improve in those farm systems and get better prospects in there. The Nationals have the number 22 ranked farm system in the league. That's just not going to get it done. But this is a guy who's been down there with the farm system and helping develop those players. So maybe he knows the right buttons to push in those respects. Staying with baseball, jumping off of that, the World Series has completely flipped on its head. When we were talking about this last week, we were sitting here just hoping that we would get a competitive series. Under the belief, most of us under the consensus that we're probably not actually going to get that because the Dodgers are loaded, they're a juggernaut, and they will end this series whenever they want to end it. Thanks for coming, Toronto. You earned the right to just come to the World Series to just get beaten by the Dodgers. That is not what is going on at all. Toronto has taken a 3-2 series lead in this series. And KB, dare I say, they have actually dominated in parts of this series. They won in Game 5 by a final score of 6-1. They won in Game 4 by a final score of 6-2. This is less than 24 hours after an 18-inning showdown that the Dodgers won because Freddie Freeman and his heroics, again, I'll never forgive the people in the Atlanta Braves organization that let that man go out that door. But they're coming 24 hours off of that emotional letdown. And in Game 1, Toronto won 11-4. And that honestly should have been a warning sign for most of us who were like, yeah, Dodgers are going to win this thing easily. But it wasn't. It was like, all right, you know what? We'll give you one. Because the Dodgers come back in Game 2 and they win 5-1. And now it's like, okay, all right, let's get back to business here. But no, they have been spectacular. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., he struggled the first couple of games into this series. He found his power again. Baby David Ortiz is back. He hit 2 home runs, one in Game 4, one in Game 5. It's the pitching for me, though, that has really told the story about Toronto. We knew that they had the offensive power to stay afloat with the Dodgers run for run. We didn't think they could get it done on the mound. And boy, were we ever wrong about that. Because Trey Yesevich, who didn't even start the season in the big leagues, by the way, he started off in single A. Just listen at this performance, because we were marveling about a week and a half ago about what Shohei Ohtani did in Game 4 of the NLCS. Trey Yesevich, 7 innings pitched, only 3 hits surrendered, gave up 1 run, 1 earned run, 12 strikeouts. I didn't expect this from Toronto. And listen, KB, I think that we're going to end up getting a Game 7, but there are some things that are going to have to change. Because let's break this down for everybody to understand. Outside of Shohei Ohtani, the Dodgers have not gotten consistent offensive production out of any more of their stars. That includes Freddie Freeman, who had that walk-off moment in Game 3. That is all he's really done significantly in this series. Mookie Betts, I don't know what is going on. He is 3 for 19 at the plate. He has to show up. He is known to have these moments. I don't know what is going on right now. Max Muncy, I don't know what's going on with him. If they don't start getting the production that they need consistent, and it has to start tonight. They lose tonight, the series is over, obviously. They have to get the production from these guys tonight. Obviously, if Ohtani gets going, it helps everybody else somewhat get going. In most cases, that hasn't been the case consistently in this series. And David Ortiz said something in the post-game of Game 5 that I think honestly is something for Toronto to consider. And then I'll toss it off to you. He said, for the remainder of this series, if I'm Toronto, I don't pitch to Ohtani, because if he gets going, it may help them get going. If he doesn't get going, they don't get going at all. So Game 6 is tonight. Yoshi Yamamoto is going on the mound. That is the best news possible for the Dodgers in that respect. We've seen this guy pitch 2 complete games in the postseason so far, 1 in the NLCS, 1 in his outing in Game 2, I believe it was, of this World Series. We'll see if he can go out there tonight. That bullpen is just way too shaky for them. I was trying to give those guys their due because they stepped it up in Game 3, especially Will Klein coming out of nowhere. Nobody had ever heard of this guy. And he goes out there and he pitches 4 innings for them. Prior to Game 3, he had not pitched more than 30 pitches in a single game. He pitched 72 pitches in that Game 3 alone, helping them stay in position to put Freddie Freeman in position to have that walk-off victory. But they have got to get it done tonight, obviously. And I'm not even saying you got to go out there and hit for power, but you got to get some type of consistency going offensively to get some runs on the board.
Yeah, there's a do or die tonight, and Toronto's going to be rocking. Like, this is going to be a hostile environment to go into, but you have your best pitcher coming up to the mound. And like you said, the offensive struggles of Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts have been glaring. Mookie Betts himself says he has been terrible, awful this series. And like I said, they're going to have to play complementary baseball. Like Shohei Ohtani, as great as he is only as great as the weapons around him as far as winning a championship. Now, Freddie Freeman, while he did come up clutch in that grueling 18-inning game, it still does not, take away from the fact that he has not played his best this series. Their stars have to play like stars, and it starts tonight, because if they do not get a star-like effort from one of 2 or either all 3, if they don't get a star effort from at least 2 of those 3 stars, they're going to be done tonight. I do feel like this is one of those games where I feel like this is one of those series where Toronto is playing with house money. There was no expectation on Toronto Blue Jays coming into the season, but there were expectations on the Dodgers to repeat based on the talent that they have on this roster. Now, I do feel like that Toronto has no added pressure. You just have to go out there and execute everything that you've done this series, because outside of a few mishaps, you've dominated this series. Like you said, from Game 1, you dominated. Even had a chance to win in Game 4. You had the opportunity. It was there. Now, it didn't work out, but that should not take away from the fact that you have played really great to be in the position that you are in this series. So I felt like that they have no added pressure. All of the pressure is on the Dodgers side of the equation. So now I just feel like this is one of those situations where we have a team that catches fire really quick and they have a chance to do something really special and take down a team that a lot of people had looked at as was going to cakewalk their way through the postseason and win another and repeat as champions. So I'm not gonna lie. I know you said that we should see a game 7. I'm looking at Toronto to close it out tonight, honestly.
I can understand exactly why you would say that. Just listen at these numbers: 346, 391, 313, 415. Those are the batting averages of the Toronto Blue Jays in this series from their best players. That 415 coming from Vladimir Guerrero Jr. But outside of him, Bo Bichette, he made his return in the postseason for the World Series. He's hitting 313 at the plate. That's good for him. Ernie Clement, their third baseman, is hitting 391. Addison Barger, their right fielder, the unsung hero, is hitting 346. Alejandro Kirk, he's only hitting 254, but he's had some heroics in this series too. I don't know if we're going to see George Springer come back in this series, but if we do, that's another problem for the Dodgers. And I can understand why you would say that too, just beyond the offensive struggles, KB. We saw things in game 5 from the Dodgers that we haven't seen from this group. Errors, mishaps. There was a missed sliding catch by Teoscar Hernandez that helped get that whole offensive train rolling even more for Toronto in game 5. An error by the pitcher in game 5 who was out there on the mound. I don't believe that it was Blake Snell who was still out there at the time. I believe it was one of their relievers that was out there on the mound when this happened. An error by the shortstop that happened. The errors that we saw by the Dodgers in game 5 of this World Series are similar to the errors that we saw by the New York Yankees in last year's World Series. And when I saw that, I said, they're crumbling. This is uncharacteristic. Forget about the fact that you can't hit the ball. You're making errors now. That's mental mistakes now. Now they're getting into your head. So we'll see if they can quickly get this thing turned around, but they have to do it tonight. It is do or die. I know I'm saying game 7, but if they don't get it done tonight, season ends tonight, and we're going to have a World Series champion that is not going to be from America for the first time in 32 years, who, ironically enough, the last time that happened was the Toronto Blue Jays in 1993.
Yeah, like you said, man, those mental mistakes, that's letting you know that the pressure of the moment is getting to you. That's letting you know that they're doing something to affect everything that you had laid out in the game plan. I knew game 5, I had sent you a text. You remember this. The first 3 pitches, 2 home runs. You can't tell me that everyone in Dodger Stadium wasn't nervous after that moment. When Vladimir Guerrero came up and he hit a no-doubter, I said, oh, my God. They're in trouble. They're in trouble. I said, yeah, they have the firepower to get back into the game, but they're in trouble. And just for them to get out of that inning was a struggle. The first inning, after they just went through that 18 inning, that's how I know they smell blood in the water. I know they see something that they feel that they can take advantage of. And it might not just be one thing. I see that they see a number of things that they see that is an opportunity, a weakness in the Dodgers, whether that be what they're doing to stifle that offense or what they're doing to stifle the bullpen when they're bringing in relievers. It's something that they're doing that I haven't seen a team do to the Dodgers, really, not even last year with the Yankees. I don't see this. I didn't see any of this coming, honestly. I didn't see the Toronto Blue Jays having the success and dominating the way they have. We always looked at the Dodgers as they're going to figure it out. They have enough talent to figure it out. But I don't know if they can overcome this. I don't. I don't really see. I don't see a game 7. But if it does, hey, I'm all for it. As a fan of baseball, I'm all for it. But I just don't see that they have enough juice right now outside of Ohtani to continue this series.
And I know that we hear a lot of people out there who are also saying, hey, how do we know this isn't rigged? I'm not going to disrespect the Toronto Blue Jays like that. They are playing absolutely phenomenal baseball right now. Give them their just due. The names that the Dodgers have on paper, they are not living up to what they are supposed to be on paper right now. They just have not been great consistently. Even if they've had great moments, they haven't been great consistently. And that's also why I asked a friend the other day, KB. I said, how much longer realistically do you believe that this Dodgers dynasty is going to last? Because those guys are older. Freddie Freeman's 36. Mookie Betts is 33. Max Muncy is in his mid to late 30s as well. You got to have more than Ohtani to get it done. And I don't know what's coming out of that farm system the next time around either. Well, we're gonna take it back to the NFL, and this is I know this is gonna be painful for KB, but we got to talk about what happened in Atlanta in Week 8, man. Because that was just absolutely an unacceptable, atrocious performance by the Atlanta Falcons. I said last week it would be a fireable offense if they lost to the Miami Dolphins, but nobody got fired. And it was more than just a loss. They got trounced. You lost 34-10 to this team whose quarterback wasn't playing well. We all were questioning and are still questioning, why is their head coach still there? So much dysfunction that appears to be going on in the locker room from the outside looking in, not actually being there, but everything they're giving to the media on a weekly basis. And we saw that they just fired their general manager today, or at least they mutually agreed to part ways. But like I said before, when you need a get right game, even if it's just temporary for that week, you play the Falcons, because the same thing happened to the San Francisco 49ers. They go to Tampa Bay, they lose to the Buccaneers, lose Fred Warner, the heart and soul of that team in that game. They got all types of backups playing in the following week's game. And they go out there and they just played spectacular, shutting that Falcons offense down. And that was led by Michael Penix Jr. and Drake London, who did not play on Sunday. But even though Falcons fans probably don't have Kirk Cousins in high regard like they did around this time last year, I believe that they were at least hoping for him to come out and play well, because if he did, that would be attractive to other teams that need help at the quarterback position, and maybe you could get a good haul in return. You're not getting a haul in return now. That was terrible what we saw on Sunday. And just from an offensive standpoint, Zach Robinson, not the answer. He looks like he's going to be able to keep his job throughout the season. I expect him to be gone after this season. But Raheem Morris, I expect him to possibly be gone too if they don't get this thing turned around. And we're saying this about a team that is 3-4. So I know that you're going to have people out there, hey, it's still a long way to go. No, we're looking at the things that we're seeing out there. That is bad. Bijan Robinson, somebody who we said 2 weeks ago is in the conversation for being the best running back in the NFL. He had 9 carries for 25 yards on Sunday. First of all, how does he just get the ball 9 times? And he wasn't injured, everybody. They just simply only gave him the ball 9 times. And KB, we have said this a million times. If the Falcons do not trust that quarterback play with that god-awful pistol offense that they're running, give the ball to Bijan and Tyler Algier and lean on your running game, and yet they are not doing it. They've got the Patriots coming up this weekend. I don't see things getting better at all.
Thanks. I'm gonna just piggyback off of one thing that you just said. 9 carries for Bijan Robinson going against the 31st. I'm gonna say it one more time. 31st ranked run defense. That is god awful. This is almost seeming like an organizational problem at this point. And also, let me look at Raheem Morris for a second, bro. I know that in this field that you have to have some type of loyalty. But now it's loyalty to a fault. You were loyal to Jimmy Lake. That got you nowhere. You're loyal to Zach Robinson. That got you nowhere. You want to know what's the biggest thing with Zach Robinson that's kind of just replaying in my head? You got a coordinator that has never been an offensive coordinator. He was a quarterback's coach. And you brought him in to be an offensive coordinator. And in a year and a half of service, the offense has looked awful. It doesn't matter who's at quarterback. It doesn't matter how much talent you have. They are going to continue to struggle. You have two of the most embarrassing losses this year. I don't care what anybody else in the NFL says. You have two of the most embarrassing losses. You lost 34-10 to a team that is intentionally trying to lose. Miami has they have no core with winning. They don't want to win. They don't want to win. Mike McDaniels lost the locker room. Tua looks confused out there. Yet Tua looked like the second coming of Peyton Manning or Tom Brady. Whoever great quarterback you want to say. He suffered no pressure. We have no zip on offense. Falcons have no outside playmakers when Drake London's out of the game. The offense looks terrible. And of course, the defense, in my opinion, is going to look bad because the offense is going 3 and out so often that they have to be on the field for prolonged amount of times. I just don't know what they're doing over there. It almost kind of looks like on Sunday that they were not prepared to play that game. They looked unprepared. They had no fight. The Dolphins marched down the field on them whenever they wanted to. Kirk Cousins, I don't ever want to hear he's better than Michael Penix at this point in his career. Kirk Cousins, at this point, he is who he is. Now, was it all on him? No. But does he have to take his significant share of the blame? Absolutely. The offensive line, terrible. Terrible. I haven't seen the Dolphins get home on pressures as many times as they did on Sunday. I haven't seen them get home on any team really this season like that. And the funny part, like I said, again, they are intentionally not trying to win. They are trying to salvage their future by remaining high in the draft. And they're also looking to sell they're taking trade offers on some of their important players. You go out and lose, not only lose, you lose embarrassingly at home. How do they come back from this, X? I'm not sure as a fan that I can continue supporting the fact that Raheem Morris has all these buzzwords. He has all the answers and has none at the same time. We hear the press conferences where he says, yeah, we got to do better. We got outcoached. We understand you got outcoached. We can see it. We can see that you got outcoached. We can see that schematically you have nothing coming into this into each game. And with them coming into Foxborough, I don't see it getting better. If anything, I see it getting worse. You cannot tell me that you can lose to teams you can beat teams like the Commanders, beat teams like the Bills, and then put up duds, absolute duds against teams like the Panthers and teams like the Dolphins. It just doesn't happen. You are inconsistent. You're lifeless, and the fan base is growing tired of watching the same thing year in and year out, especially with a more talented roster than last year and through Arthur Smith's entire tenure. You have no excuses at this point. So I'm completely out on the Falcons right now.
And here's why it's going to get worse on Sunday. Because Mike Vrabel appears to already have completely rebuilt and fixed the New England Patriots in just his first year as the head coach with that team. Now, it should be noted that in Raheem Morris's first 9 games with the Falcons as their first-year head coach a year ago, they were 6-3. So, could this be a similar situation with the Patriots where they're off to a nice start and they could sputter at the end? Possibly, but I don't see it that way because they look more buttoned up than the Falcons did on all sides of the football. Even though the Falcons were 6-3, the biggest question we still had is, okay, when is something going to happen with that defense? Well, now it's the reverse this year. The defense is doing their job for the most part. The offense is not doing what they're supposed to do. And they have an embarrassment of riches on that offense in terms of Drake London, Bijan Robinson, Michael Penix Jr., and even Kyle Pitts for that matter, because he's looked pretty good this year when they're getting him the football. But I said this a couple of weeks ago, and I'm going to say it again. They need to consider trading for a wide receiver too. They need to get a real number 2 option out there with Drake London because what they have out there is not working. But at this point, I'm starting to question if Raheem is losing the locker room because the type of loss they had on Sunday, not just the final score, but how they looked, how they played, just looking so hapless out there. That's the type of stuff that happens when you feel like coaches have lost the locker room. It just feels like the message possibly might not be getting to them anymore. Because maybe they just don't care to hear these pom-pom speeches that you've been referring to. We hear you going to the media saying all those things. Here's the problem. We don't see anything that you're doing to fix them. And that is a glaring issue.
Like you said, X, I'm kind of just I'm skeptical going forward on the whole organization because even when it comes to, I know you just said something about trading for a wide receiver. That may have been likely, but you did give up a first round pick to bring in James Pierce Jr. So you lost some of your draft capital, and now you're trying to still, you're struggling between, we know we need another playmaker on the outside, but we also have to remain with the draft capital we have going into next season so that we can get some of those pieces in maybe third, fourth round. So it's kind of just like, I don't know how they're going to do it. I don't even see them doing it this year because, like I said, they're trying to do something that, as far as offensively, that there's a level of stubbornness to it. Me and you have spoken on this before. I've even spoken to my dad on it before. You know that pistol is terrible. You know that it does not yield the results, and you've seen it game in and game out. We've seen 2 years of it. Almost 2 years of it. And yet you consistently going back to that. When Michael Penix has showed that he's looked better out of the shotgun than he has in the pistol. Bijan, I don't care what the situation is. I don't care if they're going against the best run defense in the league. 9 carries is unacceptable. From an offensive standpoint, you have one of the best, not even just best running back, you have one of the best players in the league. You have 2 of the best backs, 1A, and then maybe even on a certain day you can consider Tyler Algier 1B. But you have 2 great backs, and you refuse to feed them the ball because you're down. You're behind the sticks on third down. Now you're going into panic mode on third down. That is the reason why you cannot sustain drives, because you're not doing enough on the early downs to sustain those drives. Fourth down, you have a horse behind you, 2 of them actually, and you refuse to give them the ball. I'm completely out on Zach Robinson as an offensive coordinator. I've seen enough. I've even seen enough from Raheem Morris. Jeff Obert would be my interim head coach. If it were me today, he would be the interim head coach until we can find a permanent solution, because I have seen enough from those 2 to just completely warrant a change in Atlanta.
Yeah, I actually was about to ask, do you want to see Jeff Ulbrich go into that interim spot if they were to make a change? Now, the likelihood of them making a change is very slim to none right now, even though I will say Arthur Blank looked pretty upset after the game on Sunday, and he should have been, because he is not getting what he paid for. So we will have to wait and see what the Falcons are going to do for the remainder of the season, but I don't see things getting better in week 9. I see them fall into 3-5, and we'll see if they can regroup beyond that point. But here's also the other problem that they have. You've already had your bye week this season, so you don't have another week to rest and reset and to get things back in order. You just got to keep it going until the end of the season. So we'll see if they're able to do that. Let's get to some quick hitters here really quickly. Going to the college football world. Texas surviving in a big comeback win over Mississippi State in week 9 of the college football season last week. KB, I was equally as impressed with Texas and what I saw and what Arch Manning did in the fourth quarter. Hopefully he's okay. He was in concussion protocol earlier this week. But that was the first time I saw a semblance of, okay, there might actually be something there with him. That was the first time I said there was one throw he had where he had a clean pocket, and he hasn't had a clean pocket for most of the season. He had a clean pocket, great blocking from the offensive line, where he made a throw that I was like, okay, that was shades of Eli and Peyton right there. I could see something right there, to the point to where I texted our good friend Lawrence Vaughn, and I said, Lawrence, if we get more of that from Arch going forward and he comes back for another year, I could see potential Heisman and number 1 overall pick if there's more of that after another year of it next year. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that we've seen little splashes. We see the talent. We see splashes of it, and it's just not consistent. Now we're just waiting for him to put it all together as a whole. I like Arch Manning as a prospect. I just think that he has a lot of things that he needs to work on. Especially, this may not be his year. He still should come back. I think, in my opinion, he should come back next year. That will only increase his draft stock, because if you're asking teams to evaluate what they've seen this year, he has not looked impressive. He's looked impressive at times, but overall, has he looked impressive as a whole? No. Texas came into the season with a lot of expectations, and it started week 1 when they played against Ohio State. And it's only going to get tougher for Texas and Arch Manning if he is able to suit up this Saturday, because they have Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt looks like a team that is destined to be in that playoff. We saw the the uptick to where they got to now. We've seen it last season, and we're seeing it even more this season. And I know that we put a lot of pressure on Arch Manning, not necessarily because we don't like him as a quarterback, but because of the hype train that's been around him since he's entered Texas. There has been a significant amount of hype. And one thing about hype is you got to take the good and the bad. He has looked like one of those guys that that he is kind of raw. Because this is really, you can honestly make the case, this is his freshman season. This is his freshman season, and he is basically doing what a lot of freshmen do. Ups and downs the whole time. So with the ups and downs, you have to take the good with the bad. It is going to be ugly, and it has been ugly at times. I.e., the game against Florida. That was a game that I felt like Texas let get away from them. I'm looking forward to seeing what he does against this upcoming competition, like Vanderbilt if he does play, like Georgia if he does play. That'll let me know more of a barometer of where he's at as an individual and where Texas is as a team.
But I cannot let Mississippi State off the hook either. They had a 3-touchdown lead in the fourth quarter, and they gave it up, and Texas comes back and wins in overtime. I don't know if this head coach is the answer for them either. And I know he just got there just about a season or two ago, but that's bad. To have a 3-touchdown lead at home, the Cowbells were going crazy, and you go out there and you lose that game. So they might have some soul searching to do as well. Speaking of programs that have some soul searching to do, that would be the LSU Tigers' entire athletics organization. This news breaking last night, KB. Scott Woodward fired as the school's athletic director. This coming just a day after the governor of Louisiana, Jeff Landry, publicly criticized Woodward for how everything went down with Brian Kelly, and he also brought up the fact that Woodward was the man at Texas A&M that was responsible for the $77 million buyout that led to Jimbo Fisher's departure. And he went on to say, Jeff Landry, that Scott Woodward would not be the person who would be making the decision on who the next football coach of LSU was going to be. Maybe he knew that this was coming down the pipeline. I don't know. But what we have learned today is that the interim athletic director, Verge Osbury, a former LSU linebacker who's been connected to the university for more than 30 years, he will have full authority to hire the Tigers' next football coach, even though we don't know if he's going to be their next full-time permanent solution at athletic director. Just a week ago, we were told about how great of a job this is and how this is one of the top 3 jobs in college football. And I just got to tell you, if I'm any of those top premier candidates that folks are talking about, Lane Kiffin, Marcus Freeman, I'm staying far away from this because this has turned into a very dysfunctional situation publicly for the world to see.
Yeah, I'm actually in agreement with you, because I was looking at Marcus Freeman as being one of the top candidates for that position, and I thought it would have been a great opportunity. But with so much dysfunction, you would not want to come into the situation that is the LSU Tigers right now. You would not want to, like, as much as we would like to see Marcus Freeman or Lane Kiffin or someone of that nature possibly be one of the top targets, I just don't know if you want to come into the craziness that is what they're running over there. With so much dysfunction, you don't know if you have the backing of the school right now. You wouldn't know anything at this point. And honestly, like I said, we had a lot of expectations for a lot of these schools coming into the season. LSU was one of them. Texas was another. You have certain teams that have just underperformed altogether. And Brian Kelly, I think that the writing was on the wall. They did not look like they should. And honestly, I'm surprised that it took this long.
When it comes to Brian Kelly, I want to say this. He's not a bad football coach, but he was not meant to come coach in the SEC. He is more of a Big Ten Midwest guy. Listen, everything is not for everybody, and that's okay. But it's important to identify when you know that something is not for you. And LSU, they went ahead and they made the decision that this was just not for him. From the first day he got there to him going out on the basketball court and having that very phony, inauthentic Southern accent that he was trying to display, I could never really get that out of my head. It felt like he was trying to fit in too much. And you see former players coming out on social media this week, like Brian Neighbors, and they are celebrating the fact that he is no longer there. So that just goes to tell you how he was felt in by certain parts of the locker room, for that matter. I think he's a prime candidate to be the next head coach at Penn State, though.
Yeah, like you say, like that would make more sense because, like, when it comes to SEC football and teams in the SEC, the team embodies their coach, and you have to have a certain level of grit to be in the SEC. That is just what it is. Nick Saban had it for years. Kirby Smart has it now. You have those guys that the team goes as they go, and they respect these coaches. And like I said, that lets me know what the former players have been putting out on social media and been saying, speaking out about Brian Kelly, lets me know that they didn't even respect him from a coach. And if you don't respect your coach, then you're not going to be, as successful as you think, because there is a certain time where we need to embody what our coach represents. And if our coach represents garbage, guess what? We're going to show on the field garbage because we've tuned out mentally, like what he's been saying to us all week in practice, in team meetings. We are tuning out because we don't even respect the man enough to listen to the message that he's trying to get out to us. So I think that this is one of those things. Penn State probably would be the best ideal fit for Brian Kelly. Being in the Big Ten is a completely different situation than being in the SEC is a complete different monster. And I think that he fits more of that mold of what Penn State is looking for than an SEC school.
I do want to say this right now to Penn State Nation, Nittany Lion Nation, Happy Valley, though. Don't be surprised if Brian Kelly gets there and has the same similar types of results as James Franklin, who you all couldn't wait to get out that door. Because the fact of the matter is, you're not a better program than Ohio State. You're not a better overall program than Michigan. I question if Sherrone Moore is going to be the head coach there long term. And now you got teams like Oregon and USC who are now part of the conference too, because of the expansion. Matt Rhule signing an extension at Nebraska. We'll see if he can continue to get that program turned around. You have more competition there than you've had before. So you're not right there on the level with Ohio State. That's the problem that you're going to run into. But I do think that he is a big enough name that Penn State and their boosters, their alumni, their fans will be happy to sign off on. And even if they're not, they don't have the power to make those decisions anyway, unless, of course, you're a booster, because money talks. So, yeah. Vanderbilt winning a hard-fought game against Mizzou on Saturday. KB, I was sitting with my coworker who is a Mizzou alum and a diehard Mizzou fan, and I have never seen him get so riled up following a game. And I can understand why, because you definitely feel like if you watch that game, Mizzou may have actually been cheated out of really having a chance to get the win. There was a bad pass interference call that was called at some point in the game. The fumble that was initially ruled a fumble, and there was no clear-cut evidence that it was or it was not a fumble. And then they overturned it and it wasn't a fumble. That was what really turned the game on its head for me, because the fact that you initially called it a fumble and there was no clear-cut evidence, you shouldn't have overturned that call. And then I also questioned at the end if there was a penalty on the catch that happened at the 1 yard line. It felt like there could have been a horse collar or some type of pass interference there on Vanderbilt, but it wasn't called, and that ended the game. Because if you call that penalty and he still makes that catch, you got to at least put 1 second back on the clock. Now, if they're able to punch that ball in, or whether they're not, that would have all been on Mizzou at that point. But it felt like they may have honestly been cheated out of that game.
Yeah, you hate when it kind of feels like the refs took the game away from you. Like I said, that was a valiant effort on Missouri's part. I just didn't like some of the calls, and there were so many questionable calls. It kind of almost feels as many questionable calls in that game as the Georgia Auburn game. It was a bunch of calls that, honestly, it looks almost like they were like the refs were favoring a certain side, especially in a game where it's mostly a defensive struggle. Both offenses really couldn't generate too much of anything, and so I feel like Missouri has nothing to hang their heads over because they went to war with a team that's honestly looking at playoff aspirations in Vanderbilt. I think that going forward, Vanderbilt has to be able to flip that switch if they're going to be competitive and continue to be competitive in the SEC. Um, yeah, man, I don't really have too much to say, but it's really unfortunate as far as them feeling like the game was stolen from them.
Couple of NFL games we'll get to before we get to part two of the podcast here. The Bills rolling in Carolina on Sunday. I didn't necessarily find that as a surprise, them winning the game the way that they did. James Cook has been spectacular all season for them. But they got Kansas City coming into Orchard Park on Sunday. And even though it's a regular season game, and I know that the Bills have done well against the Chiefs in their previous regular season games, this feels like a must win situation for Buffalo KB because they've been so up and down this season. And we've been questioning, and I'll continue to question, how much is Sean McDermott really on the hot seat this time around? Because things just don't feel the same. We don't even know if they're going to win their division. Obviously, if they are going to stay afloat, we expect the Patriots to win on Sunday when they host the Falcons. If Buffalo's going to stay afloat, this feels like one of those games they have to win.
Yeah, it's a must win for sure, especially with the division hanging in the grass, hanging right now. I also think this is a statement game. Kansas City has been rolling as of late. And if you really want to be taken serious, you have to win this game. You have to kind of stop that Kansas City momentum because since they've gotten all their weapons back, they've been a runaway train, honestly. And with the Patriots dominating the way they have in recent weeks and pretty much this entire season, with them holding that tiebreaker over you, you have to have every single game because right now it's a two-team race in the AFC East. You have to be able to separate yourself and get back to more consistent level of football. Like you said, I'm not surprised what happened in Carolina. James Cook is a top 5 running back to me in this league, and Josh Allen, all he has to do is continue to play at an MVP level like he did last season. For Buffalo, I need to see more from those outside weapons. Keon Coleman, I'm looking for you, big dog. I need to see it. You just got called out by Steve Smith recently saying that you have to be able, you can't teach these guys that dog mentality. And I'm not going to go as far as to say he doesn't have that dog mentality in him. I just need to see it more. I need to see more consistent level of play. Khalil Shakir, I need to see more because honestly, when I think of that Buffalo Bills offense outside of Josh Allen and James Cook, I look at guys like Dalton Kincaid before I look at guys like Keon Coleman. I need to see more from their so-called playmakers before I can get really excited about Buffalo Bills. And I think their defense also needs to make a statement. If they come out and they shut Pat Mahomes and this high-flying offense down, this will make more of a statement going forward and could give them the momentum that they need to win this division. But right now, it's all up in the air because the Patriots look damn good. They really do. Drake May looks like an MVP. So I'm waiting to see, but they need this game.
The last game we'll break down, and this isn't one that we originally had on the itinerary, but there were so many storylines that went into this one. And I know that we've said our things that we've said here about the Mets and the Jets, but genuinely, I'm very happy for the New York Jets. I'm happy for Justin Fields. I'm happy for Aaron Glenn. I'm happy for Jets Nation because Sunday was so heavy for so many different reasons. We got the sad news on Sunday about Nick Mangold passing away from kidney disease. Rest in peace to him at 41 years old, just way too young to go away. They have the game in Cincinnati, not too far from where he grew up. They were down big in this game, but they kept that fighting spirit on display. I don't know if it was a guiding force from above that was watching over them. That's a new guardian angel for that team and that organization. But they got it done, KB. They came back and they won 39-38. Justin Fields was spectacular in the fourth quarter of that game. Brees Hall did his thing in that game. And what Justin Fields had to say about the game, really leaning into his faith and leaning on God, was really profound and really stood out to me, especially after the week he had last week where Woody Johnson came out and just took a dump all over him verbally to everybody, talking about how bad the quarterback play is and how can you expect to win when you have that, trying to back Aaron Glenn up, but just completely dumping all over Justin Fields in the process. And he talked about how he went into the closet and he cried about this whole thing. And he talked about how he was ready to start crying on the field, but not because of the fact they won the game, but because of the goodness of God. And it was just so profound to see that.
Yeah, this was definitely an emotional game from different aspects. First of all, rest in peace to Nick Mango, a mainstay in that Jets offense for years. You see how emotional Rex Ryan was, just showing how detailing how good of a person he was. Forget football, he was just a good person. And then second of all, you got guys like Justin Fields. The important thing that came out of this game is no matter who believes in you, as long as you believe in you, as long as you have faith in God and you have belief in yourself, you can overcome any obstacle. And even when it's your own organization that is against you, as long as you have that confidence in yourself to go out there and perform on a week to week basis. And he did all of this without his main top target, Garrett Wilson. That's an important part to note in this whole thing. And like you said, I'm happy for Aaron Glenn as well, because now he can finally get that monkey off his back. He can finally, I feel like even through the struggles, they have not given up on Aaron Glenn. I think that he is a player's coach. I think the guys are motivated to play for him. And that game showed that they had some kind of grit, some kind of heart to actually go out there down 14 points. Down 14 points. And not only to come back the way they did, but to have the cojones really to go for two. To take the lead. They weren't going for overtime. They weren't going for any ties. They wanted to win this game. They wanted to win it for not only for Aaron Glenn, but for Nick. To do it for Nick. And like I said, this was just overall, I got to give everyone on that side credit because they took that game. They weren't giving anything. They took it away. And so hopefully this is more things to come going forward. So we'll see.
All right, that will do it for part one of the Why Not Us, Why Not Now podcast. We'll be right back with part two. We got to break down some things that are happening in the NBA world, man, because we're more than a weekend and it's been a very exciting season so far. KB and X coming at you. We'll be right back.